We are being deceived into believing that awakening is a trophy, a sparkling costume to be worn for display. This confusion is not accidental. It is carefully nurtured by a world that only profits when you feel that you are never quite enough. But what if I told you that true awakening isn't impressive at all? In fact, it might be something so ordinary, it's almost disappointing. There is a great deal of confusion about what it means to be awake. And this confusion is not accidental. It is created, maintained, and quietly encouraged by the same forces that profit from our restlessness. We live in a world that loves appearances, a world that rewards certainty, confidence, performance. So naturally, when the idea of awakening enters such a world, it is immediately dressed up, decorated, and turned into a costume. Someone speaks with authority and calm assurance, and we think, they must know. Someone quotes ancient texts with poetic precision, and we assume they have touched something beyond us. Someone looks serene, composed, always smiling, and we imagine they have escaped the chaos we feel inside. We are very good at mistaking polish for depth. We do it in business, we do it in politics, and we do it relentlessly in spirituality. But awakening was never meant to be impressive. That may be the first shock, and perhaps the first disappointment, because most people are secretly hoping awakening will look like a promotion, a final arrival, a spiritual resume that proves, at last, that all the suffering was worth it. We want it to sparkle. We want it to glow. We want it to separate the awakened from the confused in a way that is obvious, undeniable, and flattering. And so we start collecting signs, indicators, symptoms. We look for unusual experiences, mystical visions, dramatic realizations. We listen for special language. We watch for a certain calm, a certain glow, a certain way of speaking that says, I have figured it out. And when we find someone who fits the image, we relax. The search seems over. We think we have found the real thing. But what if the image itself is the problem? What if awakening has nothing to do with becoming extraordinary and everything to do with seeing through the need to be? Alanwatts once suggested that life is more like a dance than a journey. And if you take that seriously, you begin to notice something peculiar. A dance is not about arriving anywhere. The point is not to finish. The point is the movement itself, the play, the rhythm. And yet we keep treating awakening as if it were a destination, a final achievement that puts an end to uncertainty forever. That misunderstanding creates an entire marketplace of spiritual identities. People learn how to look awake, how to talk awake, how to sound detached, wise, and unbothered, even how to appear humble in a very strategic way. And the irony is exquisite. The ego, sensing danger, disguises itself as its own disappearance. So someone says, I have no ego, and the ego quietly smiles. This is not a criticism, it is a description. Because the desire to wake up often comes from the same place as the desire to be admired, respected, and safe. The mind does not easily give up control. If it cannot dominate the world through success, it will attempt to dominate it through insight. And so confusion deepens. We start believing that awakening must feel like constant clarity, that it must remove doubt, anxiety, and contradiction, that the awake person must always know what to say, how to act, and what things mean. We imagine that awakening produces a permanent inner silence, a smooth surface without ripples. But listen carefully. That fantasy is still a form of resistance to life. It is the refusal to allow uncertainty, messiness, and not knowing to exist. It is the same old demand dressed in new language. Make this uncomfortable thing go away. Only now, instead of asking success or relationships to save us, we ask awakening to do the job. And this is where the great mistake happens. We begin to associate awakening with control. Control over thoughts, control over emotions, control over circumstances, control over meaning itself. We assume that if someone is truly awake, they must have mastered the inner chaos that terrifies us, that they must be immune to confusion, fear, and contradiction. But awakening does not remove the chaos. It removes the one who was fighting it. This is why truly awake people are so often overlooked. They do not perform certainty. They do not radiate answers. They do not signal their depth in ways the world has been trained to recognize. In fact, they can appear strangely unremarkable, almost disappointingly human. They may hesitate. They may laugh at the wrong moment. They may say, "I don't know," without embarrassment. And because of this, they are often dismissed. Surely, we think, awakening must look more impressive than that. But notice what is really happening. We are searching for awakening as a solution to our discomfort. We want it to rescue us from anxiety, from overthinking, from the pressure to become someone worthwhile. And so we imagine awakening as the ultimate defense mechanism, a state where nothing can touch us anymore. Yet the deeper truth is almost playful in its simplicity. Awakening does not make you untouchable. It makes you undefended. It is not a shield. It is an openness. And openness does not look heroic. It looks ordinary. It looks like someone who is no longer trying to prove anything. Someone who has stopped auditioning for life. Someone who has quietly realized that the entire game of becoming enough was based on a misunderstanding. Because who exactly was supposed to become enough? This question rarely arrives with fireworks. More often, slips in unnoticed, like a subtle shift in perspective. The constant tension softens. The effort relaxes. The inner narrator grows quieter, not because it was silenced, but because it is no longer believed in quite the same way. And from the outside, almost nothing seems to change. That is the great paradox. Awakening is not an addition, it is a subtraction. Not the acquisition of something new, but the falling away of something unnecessary. The belief that you must constantly manage yourself in order to be acceptable to existence. Alanwatts spoke often about the illusion of the ego, not as a thing you destroy, but as a role you stop mistaking for the actor. And when that recognition happens, even slightly, life begins to feel less like a courtroom and more like a stage. You still play your part, you still speak your lines, but you are no longer convinced that the role is who you are. This is why the early signs of awakening are so easily missed. They are quiet, anticlimactic. They do not announce themselves. In fact, they often look like a loss rather than a gain. A loss of urgency, a loss of spiritual ambition, a loss of the desperate need to be certain. And that can feel unsettling. Because if awakening is not dramatic, not impressive, not protective, then what is left? Just this moment without commentary, this breath without interpretation, this life without the constant demand that it justify itself. And perhaps that is why the truly awake person is so hard to spot. They are no longer trying to stand out. They are no longer trying to arrive. They are simply here. And to a world addicted to striving, that can look like nothing at all. If part 1 unsettles the search, part 2 quietly dismantles the seeker. Because once the fantasy of awakening as something extraordinary begins to collapse, another question appears, softer but far more dangerous to the ego. If awakening is not about becoming special, then what happens to the one who wanted to be? This is where many people turn back, not because the truth is harsh, but because it is disarmingly simple. Too simple to decorate, too plain to turn into an identity. Awakening, it turns out, does not elevate you above the world. It returns you to it. And this is the shock. The truly awake person does not feel above anything. They do not float above the chaos of human life with a serene smile while others struggle below. They stand right in the middle of it. Grocery lines, traffic jams, awkward conversations, unpaid bills, and somehow nothing about it feels out of place. They are not special. And strangely enough, that is the miracle. We have been trained to associate significance with distinction. If something matters, it must stand out. If someone is wise, they must be different. Louder or quieter, more intense or more peaceful. But ordinariness has never impressed them. Modern mind. It doesn't sell. It doesn't signal success. Yet awakening strips away the need to signal. The truly awake person has seen through the exhausting project of self-definition. They no longer wake up each morning asking, consciously or unconsciously, who must I be today to earn my place? That question loses its urgency, not because it was answered, but because it was exposed as unnecessary. There is a peculiar relief in that. Imagine no longer needing to maintain an image, not even a spiritual one. No longer needing to appear calm, kind, wise, healed, or evolved. No longer needing to manage how others perceive your depth. What remains is not emptiness, but ease. And ease to an anxious world can look suspiciously like indifference. But it is not indifference. It is intimacy without tension. Alanwatts once described the ego as a mask, a role mistaken for the self. And what happens when the mask loosens is not the disappearance of personality, but the end of strain. The face beneath was always there. It simply forgot it didn't have to perform. This is why awakened ordinariness can be so disarming. You expect revelation, and instead you encounter someone who is relaxed about being human. Someone who does not need to correct you, impress you, or subtly position themselves above you. Someone who does not need to win the conversation or even finish it. They are content to be incomplete. They do not rush to fill silence. They do not rush to explain themselves. They do not rush to resolve ambiguity. And because of this, their presence has quietly unsettling effects. Not because they do anything, but because they are not doing what everyone else is doing. They are not trying to arrive. Most people, without realizing it, are constantly leaning into the future, waiting for the moment when they will finally be settled, secure, validated. Awakening interrupts this lean. It brings the weight back into the body, back into the moment, back into the unglamorous fact of being alive right now. And this is why awakened ordinariness is often mistaken for laziness, lack of ambition, or disengagement. But look more closely. The awake person still acts, still works, still creates, builds, participates, but they are no longer driven by the belief that life is a problem to be solved or a resume to be completed. Action arises, but without the undertone of desperation. They do not need to make a point of being spiritual. In fact, they often avoid it, because spirituality, when worn as an identity, is just another costume. And they have already grown tired of costumes. This does not mean they reject depth or mystery. Quite the opposite. They are immersed in it, but they do not package it. They do not market it. They do not turn it into a personality trait. They understand something subtle. The moment you try to look awake, you are already asleep to what you are doing. This is why the truly awake person is often overlooked in spiritual spaces. They don't dominate discussions. They don't announce realizations. They don't compete over who has seen further, felt more, or let go deeper. They are not interested in spiritual status because they have seen how fragile and fictional status always is. And perhaps most unsettling of all, they are not trying to get rid of their humanity. They still feel irritation, sadness, joy, confusion. They still have preferences and habits and quirks, but none of these are taken as evidence for or against their worth. They do not narrate their inner weather as a spiritual success or failure. Rain happens, sunshine happens. Neither requires commentary. The ordinariness of awakening is not dull. It is alive. It is flexible. It moves with life rather than resisting it. But because it refuses to dramatize itself, it often escapes notice. You might sit next to an awake person on a plane and never know it. They won't correct your worldview. They won't radiate wisdom. They won't subtly steer the conversation toward enlightenment. They may talk about movies, or complain about the coffee, or sit quietly and look out the window. And yet, if you pay attention, there is a quality that cannot quite be named. A lack of urgency, a lack of self-defense. A sense that nothing is being pushed. This is not something that can be imitated convincingly, because imitation requires effort, and effort carries tension. Ordinariness without tension cannot be performed. It happens when the need to perform collapses. And here is the deeper irony. The person who is truly awake often does not think of themselves as awake at all. That label belongs to the old game, the game of being someone who has arrived. When the game falls apart, so does the title. There is no badge to wear, no finish line to celebrate, no identity to protect. There is just life happening. And for a mind trained to equate meaning with achievement, that can feel almost insulting. Surely you think there must be more to it than this. And there is. But it is not more in the direction of height, status, or transcendence. It is more in the direction of intimacy, of closeness, of being so fully here that nothing needs to be excluded or elevated. The awake person has not escaped the world. They have stopped standing apart from it, and because of that, they blend in far more easily than anyone expects. Which raises a quiet, uncomfortable question. If awakening looks this ordinary, how many people have you already passed by without noticing? And more disturbingly still, how many times have you already touched it yourself and dismissed it because it didn't feel special enough? If ordinariness is the disguise of awakening, presence is its quiet signature. Not presence as a technique, not presence as something practiced, cultivated, or performed, but presence as what remains when the mind stops running commentary on itself. When attention is no longer divided between what is happening and what should be happening. You feel it immediately when you encounter it. There is a subtle shift, a soft settling, as if the room has become slightly more real. The truly awake person is not doing anything special with their attention. They are simply not elsewhere. They are not split between past regrets and future plans. They are not rehearsing their next sentence while you are still speaking. They are not scanning for approval, danger, or advantage. They are here. And in a culture addicted to distraction that feels almost uncanny, most interactions are partial, half listening, half performing, half protecting. We talk while adjusting our inner image. We listen while preparing our response. We are present just enough to function, but not enough to dissolve. The awake person has stepped out of that fragmentation, not because they have disciplined the mind into silence, but because they are no longer hypnotized by its constant narration. Thoughts may still arise, memories, associations, plans, but they are not treated as orders that must be followed. They come and go like weather. And this creates a quality of contact that is increasingly rare. When you are with someone like this, you feel met, not analyzed, not evaluated, not subtly categorized, just met. There is no sense of being watched from behind the eyes, no feeling that something else is happening somewhere else. It can be unsettling at first, because presence has a way of revealing what we habitually avoid. In the space of genuine attention, masks loosen, performances falter. The background noise of self-consciousness becomes obvious. You may find yourself wanting to fill the silence, to explain, to entertain, to justify your existence. And the awake person does not stop you. They simply remain. Alanwatts often spoke of the illusion of separation, the feeling of being a thinker trapped inside a body, observing life from a distance. Presence is what happens when that distance collapses. When experience is no longer filtered through the question, what does this mean about me? This is why presence feels so intimate. It is not intimacy created through sharing secrets or emotional disclosure. It is intimacy without effort. The intimacy of two things happening in the same place at the same time without resistance. The awake person is not trying to be attentive. They are not holding space. They are not applying a spiritual skill. The attention is natural because there is nothing else they would rather be doing. There is nowhere else to go. This is what makes their presence restorative. Not because they are healing you, but because they are not extracting anything from the interaction. They are not using you to confirm their identity. They are not waiting for a cue to impress or instruct. They do not need the moment to become something else. And this can feel like a relief you did not know you were carrying. Many people describe it as being seen, but that is not quite accurate. It is more like being unburdened, as if for a brief moment you do not have to explain yourself into existence. You are allowed to be unfinished. Presence allows this because it does not demand coherence. It does not require you to be consistent, confident, or clear. It meets you where you are without trying to take you somewhere else. And notice the paradox. The awake person does not stare. They do not fixate. Their attention is soft, not intense. There is no pressure in it, no sense of effort. It is the difference between holding something tightly and letting it rest in your open hand. This softness is often misunderstood as passivity, but it is not passive. It is responsive without being reactive. When action is needed, it arises. When silence is appropriate, it remains. The key is that nothing is being forced. Most of our anxiety comes from this constant forcing ourselves to think clearly, forcing ourselves to feel differently, forcing life to make sense on our terms. Presence dissolves that effort by revealing its futility. You cannot force yourself into now. You either notice you are here, or you are lost in a story about not being here yet. The awake person has simply noticed. And because of that, they are not in a hurry to interpret experience. They do not rush to label emotions as good or bad. They do not immediately turn discomfort into a problem. They allow experience to unfold before deciding what it means, if it needs to mean anything at all. This is why their presence can feel grounding. They are not dragging the moment into a mental framework. They are letting it be what it is. And in doing so, they give you permission, without saying a word, to do the same. It is important to understand that presence does not mean the absence of thought. That is another fantasy. Thoughts continue, feelings continue, reactions arise. But none of these are taken personally. They are events, not identities. The awake person does not confuse the weather for the sky. This is why their presence has depth without heaviness. There is room in it, room for humor, room for awkwardness, room for contradiction. They can laugh in the middle of seriousness and be serious in the middle of laughter. Nothing is out of place. And perhaps the most telling sign of all, they are comfortable with silence. Not the tense silence that begs to be filled, but the living silence that does not need justification. The silence that is not empty, but full of whatever is happening. In that silence, something curious occurs. The pressure to be someone eases. The background anxiety softens. The mind, finding no resistance, slows down on its own, not because it was told to stop, but because there is no longer a problem to solve. And in that moment, you may glimpse something familiar, something you have always known but rarely trust, that you do not need to improve yourself in order to be present. You do not need to understand life in order to be here. You are already included. The awake person does not create this realization. They simply do not interfere with it. And because of that, being with them feels less like learning something new and more like remembering something old. Something so obvious it was overlooked. Something so close it was mistaken for nothing. And that, perhaps, is the quiet power of presence. Not that it teaches, but that it reveals what was never missing in the first place. If presence is the atmosphere of awakening, then the end of inner conflict is its gravity, not the absence of challenge, not the elimination of difficulty, but the quiet cessation of war. Most people are exhausted not by what happens to them, but by what they do to themselves in response. The constant commentary, the inner negotiations, the endless attempt to correct, improve, suppress, or justify their own experience. Even rest is often turned into a task to be completed properly. The awake person has stepped out of this battle, not because they want it, but because they recognize something unsettling. The one fighting was the one creating the fight. This is not resignation, it is clarity. For years, perhaps decades, the mind insists that peace will arrive once it finally fixes itself. Once it becomes calmer, wiser, more healed, more spiritual. Once it removes the wrong thoughts and installs the right ones. And so life becomes a self-improvement project with no finish line. Awakening interrupts this project. It reveals that the effort to improve the self is built on a misunderstanding of what the self is. You cannot perfect a mirage. You cannot stabilize something that only exists as a pattern of thought. Alanwatts spoke of this with characteristic humor, pointing out that trying to improve yourself is like trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. The effort assumes a solid entity that needs adjustment. Awakening questions the assumption itself. And when that assumption loosens, something profound happens. The tension drops. Not all at once, not permanently, but fundamentally. The awake person still learns, still adapts, still responds to life's demands, but the emotional tone is different. There is no longer a sense that something is wrong with them for being as they are in this moment. They are not at war with their own thoughts. They are not ashamed of their emotions. They are not trying to get rid of discomfort before allowing themselves to be at peace. This does not make them passive or indifferent. It makes them precise. When action is needed, it arises cleanly, without resentment. When rest is needed, it happens without guilt. When confusion appears, it is met with curiosity instead of panic. This is what inner peace actually looks like. Not a constant smile, not a tranquil personality, but the absence of self-violence. Most anxiety is a form of internal aggression, a demand that experience be different from what it is, a refusal to allow uncertainty to exist. The awake person does not eliminate uncertainty. They befriend it. They understand something the anxious mind finds intolerable. Not knowing is not a problem. In fact, not knowing is the natural state of reality. Life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a process to be participated in. The demand for final answers is the mind's attempt to freeze movement. Awakening allows movement. This is why the awake person often appears relaxed even in difficult situations. Not because they do not care, but because they are not adding unnecessary resistance. They respond to what is in front of them, not to the story of how things should have gone. They have stopped arguing with the past. They have stopped bargaining with the future. And because of that, their energy is available for what actually matters. This inner ease is often misunderstood as lack of ambition or drive. But again, look more closely. The awake person still acts, still creates, still engages. The difference is that their action is no longer fueled by self-rejection. They do not need to become someone else in order to deserve peace. They do not postpone acceptance until after improvement. They begin where they are. And this beginning has no drama. It is simply the recognition that the war against oneself was never required. That the constant internal friction was not a sign of growth, but a sign of misunderstanding. This recognition does not produce bliss. It produces space. Space around thoughts, space around emotions, space around identity. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. The self stops being a problem. The awake person is not constantly monitoring their inner state. They do not ask, "Am I doing this right?" or "Should I be feeling differently?" They trust the intelligence of life more than the anxious calculations of the mind. This trust is not blind, it is experiential. They have seen that fighting experience does not create clarity, it creates noise. They have seen that allowing experience does not lead to collapse, it leads to responsiveness. And so they rest, even while moving. There is a stillness beneath their activity, not a stillness that freezes, but one that stabilizes, like the eye of a storm, present even while winds move through it. You may notice this in how they deal with pain. They do not deny it. They do not dramatize it. They feel it. Pain is allowed to be pain. Fear is allowed to be fear. Sadness is allowed to be sadness. None of it is taken as a verdict on their worth or a failure of awakening. The mind loves to ask, "Why am I still feeling this way?" As if feeling were a mistake. The awake person does not ask that question. They let feeling happen. And because of that, feeling moves. What remains is not numbness, but fluidity. Experience flows instead of coagulating into identity. This is why the awake person often feels light, even when dealing with heavy circumstances. Not because the circumstances are light, but because there is no additional weight of self-judgment attached. They have stopped trying to win against themselves. And perhaps the most radical aspect of all, they no longer believe that awakening will save them from being human. They have made peace with imperfection, not as a virtue, not as a slogan, but as a fact. They understand that the desire to become flawless was always a misunderstanding of what life is for. Life is not aiming at perfection. It is aiming at expression. And expression requires contrast, tension, movement, change. Awakening does not flatten life into neutrality. It liberates it from unnecessary struggle. And when the struggle ends, not because it was resolved, but because it was seen through, something quiet and powerful takes its place. Ease. Not the ease of comfort, but the ease of not fighting what you are. And in that ease, action becomes clearer, relationships become simpler, and life, strangely enough, begins to feel less like a problem and more like a conversation. One you no longer need to control, only participate in. And perhaps that is the deepest freedom the awake person discovers. Not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from the belief that difficulty means something has gone wrong. And when that belief dissolves, the inner war ends, not with a victory, but with a laugh. The kind of laugh that comes when you realize the door you were trying to force open was never locked in the first place. If you are looking for the awake one, the final irony is this: the search itself is what obscures them. Not because searching is wrong, but because it carries an assumption that something essential is missing. That awakening exists somewhere else, in someone else, at some later point in time. And that assumption quietly shapes what you are able to see. We look for awakening the way we look for success or certainty, by scanning for signals, by measuring, by comparing, by asking, do they have what I don't? But awakening does not operate on the logic of scarcity. It is not a possession passed from one person to another. It is not a state you acquire by proximity or imitation. It is recognition. And recognition does not feel like achievement. It feels like remembering. This is why the awake person does not stand out in a dramatic way. They do not glow with authority. They do not pull attention toward themselves. In fact, they often make room for attention to return to where it already is, to the moment, to the body, to the simple fact of being here. You may notice that around them, things slow down. Conversations become less performative. Silence becomes less awkward. There is less urgency to conclude, explain, or resolve. Life is allowed to unfold without constant commentary, and this can be deeply disorienting because much of our identity is built on tension, on striving, on becoming. When that tension softens, the question arises, if I am not trying to arrive somewhere, who am I now? Alanwatts liked to remind his listeners that life is not a journey with a destination, but a play of forms, a dance that has no purpose beyond the dancing itself. And if that is true, then awakening is not about escaping the dance. It is about knowing you are dancing. Once that knowing settles in, even briefly, the need to seek dissolves on its own. Not because you have found what you were looking for, but because you realize you were standing in it all along. This is why truly awake people rarely try to awaken others. They are not on a mission. They do not need converts. They understand that awakening cannot be transferred through persuasion or effort. It happens when the seeking exhausts itself. When the one who is trying to wake up is seen as part of the dream. And here is the quietest, most unsettling truth. When you recognize awakening in someone else, what you are really recognizing is your own capacity to see it. You cannot recognize presence if you have never tasted it. You cannot recognize ease if you have never relaxed. You cannot recognize aliveness if you are completely numb. Something in you already knows. This is why the presence of an awake person can feel strangely familiar, not because they are extraordinary, but because they are not pretending. And in that absence of pretense, something in you remembers how to stop pretending too. They do not awaken you. They remind you. And reminders are gentle. They do not shout. They do not argue. They simply point, not to themselves, but to what is already happening. This is why the signs of awakening are not found in behavior, beliefs, or personality. They are found in the quality of being, in the lack of strain, in the ease of not needing to be someone in particular. The awake person does not announce, "I am awake." They are too busy living. They wash dishes. They make mistakes. They laugh at inappropriate moments. They forget things. They feel pain. They feel joy. And none of it threatens who they are, because they are no longer defined by these passing forms. So if you are hoping to spot someone who is truly awake, look for what is absent rather than what is present. Look for the absence of self-importance, the absence of urgency, the absence of resistance. Look for someone who is not trying to escape life, explain life, or win at life. Look for someone who has stopped arguing with reality. And then, if you are very honest, notice what happens next. Because the moment you truly see this quality, the question quietly turns around. It stops being, "Who out there is awake?" and becomes, "What in me recognizes this?" That question does not demand an answer. It opens a space where the usual tension loosens, a space where the constant search pauses, a space where you may, for a brief and unremarkable moment, stop trying to be anywhere else. And in that pause, something simple reveals itself. You are already here, not as a goal achieved, not as an identity claimed, but as the living, breathing reality you never actually left. The awake person does not give you this realization. They do not own it. They do not withhold it. They simply stand in a way that does not block it. And now perhaps neither do you. So there is nothing to chase, nothing to prove, nothing to become. Just this quiet invitation, not to wake up someday, but to notice what is already awake in the noticing itself. And if that feels too ordinary to be true, that may be the clearest sign you are finally looking in the right direction. Have you ever felt truly met by someone, not evaluated or categorized, but simply allowed to be unfinished? I'd love to hear your story of what that interaction was like.